Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ascender's virtual space. I can see a lot of new faces today, so welcome. If this is your first time, we're really happy to have you. If this is not your first time here at Ascender or one of our Ascender workshops, welcome back. It's always nice to see you continue learning and growing with us. My name is Anya Aleman, Innovation Director here at Ascender. Ascender is Pittsburgh community for entrepreneurs. We offer educational programs, mentorship, expert coaching, business incubation, and run an entrepreneur-focused co-working space near Bakery Square. If you haven't checked out our space, please come visit us. Just come say hi. We're always happy to get guests, take a tour, whatnot. We're located here in East Liberty, so very nice and centralized location. If you're not here in Pittsburgh, just check out our website. Spend 5 minutes to see what we have to offer, all of our programs, resources, membership, and many more things. But I am very excited and honored to have the Headstorm Pittsburgh office to join us in our virtual Ascender space today. They will be walking us through what SEO is and why it is important for businesses of all sizes and industry to know and to adopt as one of their digital marketing tools. I let the team explain it a little bit better. So Pat and team, feel free to kick it off, some introductions, and tell us what we're going to cover today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Anya. Really appreciate the introduction, and good afternoon to you all. We're really excited to spend a little bit of time with you over the next hour and a half to talk search engine optimization. Kyle's going to pull up some slides here for us to walk through. We're coming to you from our Lawrenceville-based Pittsburgh office. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Headstorm to get us kicked off, just to contextualize you around who we are, what we do, why we know a thing or two about this topic. And then I'm going to kick it over to the team to walk us through some of the content that you all are here for today. So as we know, the theme this week is how to stand out, how to build yourself a web presence. So our focus primarily today is going to be on search engine optimization, though of course this topic has infinite different applications beyond the technical or semi-technical that we'll talk about today, and into some of the more graphic, the design-oriented aspects as well. So again, and I think just by virtue of you being here, you're familiar with what we're intending to do today. So we're going to spend about 90 minutes together walking you through the concepts of search engine optimization. We really appreciate your presence. I think we all have gotten used to the Zoom routine by now. So as anyone does as they're presenting, we really appreciate engagement. Cameras on, of course, if you're able, and then chats. Feel free to interrupt us with questions. Ultimately, we're here to be a resource for you. So please feel free to engage us in whatever way that allows us to best achieve that. All right. So to kick us off, first we want to see where you all fall on the spectrum of expertise in search engine optimization. And so Eric, sitting next to me, has been kind enough to drop a quick poll into the chat. We ask that each of you follow that URL and take the poll. That will help us as we are running through this content to understand exactly how to cater the level of expertise around search engine optimization for the group that we have here today. So if you don't mind taking a few seconds to do that while we get started, that would be much appreciated. I'll give folks maybe 30 seconds just as a pause before we move forward into telling you a little bit about Headstorm.
Hey, can we get just a thumbs up or something from folks? Just make sure that you're able to access that link, and it is okay. I see a couple thumbs up. Awesome, thank you. And obviously, if anyone has trouble accessing it, feel free to speak up or drop anything in the chat, and I will help you out.
All right. Looks like we have a pretty good set of responses. Very good. And Sonia, we see your note. We'll private message you and see if we can help with the access issue.
Maybe try this link. This one won't collect. I don't know if it'll. Maybe you don't have a Google account, perhaps.
All right. Kyle, let's go ahead and of course, again, we can continue to answer questions in the chat if there are any issues. So a little bit on what we're going to cover for you today. Of course, like I said, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Headstorm, what we do, and our presence here in the Pittsburgh community. We're going to get into digital marketing, then of course the core of SEO. What is SEO? What are the different types of SEO? And then we're going to actually get into some applied tools and resources that we'll quickly demonstrate today, but also that we'll link out to you to be able to go and begin your own SEO journey as you start to dig in and learn more. So let's start with the first topic. So Headstorm, and Kyle, feel free to progress. Headstorm is a product incubator and engineering shop located here in Lawrenceville. These are just a few of the clients that we serve in a variety of industries, but you'll notice that all of our clients align with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So essentially all that means is that we work with clients that do good things for the world. We have our office here in Lawrenceville, right on 42nd Street, as well as an office in Dallas, in Addison, Texas, which is our original company headquarters. So a quick map. This is, you're talking to Pat, this is me here in Pittsburgh, as well as the talented team around me. We have a whole team of leadership down in Texas, and at the left you can see some of the things that we do, right? So we do research and essentially human-centered design. We architect and build technology solutions, and then we design and build whatever it may be. If it's a mobile platform, a data engineering solution, really any core need in the technical space, we help to serve for our clients. Our biggest differentiator is culture. Our teams love doing activities like this, getting out into the community, helping to educate and engage folks around technology. We hold a program called Headstorm University every Friday, where members of the team do exactly what we're doing here, which is educate each other to improve their technical aptitude in a wide array of interests. Now, we are, of course, a technology company, but we do this all with a business mindset, and that's why SEO really falls perfectly in the center of those things. So we focus on technology, but only in the context of what creates value for a business. We build our own products. We have open source products, like I said, human-centered design, and a wide array of tools that we recommend for our clients and we use ourselves. So again, some of our services, don't spend too much time on this. Takeaway here, we're always happy just to chat with you. Don't feel like you have to pay us a big 7-figure contract to engage with Headstorm. We love being a resource in the community, so always available to help with anything technical that may come up for your startups. I'm a multi-time alum of local startups here in Pittsburgh. I know Kyle and a few other folks in the room are as well. So we're always happy to chat and be helpful if we can. And of course, always feel free to stop by and say hi. Like I said, 42nd Street in Lawrenceville, we're right across from the post office. The door is literally always open, at least when we're there and when we're inside. Hopefully not more than that. Feel free to just drop by and say hi. We love dogs, so bring your dog by. That is, that would definitely make our day. So anyway, that's enough from me on Headstorm. Feel free, of course, ping us in the chat if we can be helpful. But I'm going to pass it off to Eric now to get us kicked off on the basics of digital marketing and get us into our SEO content.
Hello, everyone. I think we kind of glossed a little bit over our intro slides, so I'll just give a quick intro. My name is Eric Bauman. I was born and raised in the Pittsburgh area. Went to the University of Pittsburgh for undergrad, and I have been working with Headstorm for about 2 years now. And I am here to talk about the ins and outs of digital marketing, how it fits into your overall marketing strategy, and then kind of the different avenues that you can take, both paid and kind of unpaid, for pursuing a better digital marketing strategy. So let's kick off and just talk about the big picture here, which is you all are in attendance because you presumably operate businesses and you are interested in trying to understand how you can better grow your digital presence. And we might have skipped forward a couple slides here, but we are talking about kind of why you should care about digital marketing. And Anya kind of hinted at this at the onset, is that, you know, we live in this increasingly digital world. More and more of interactions with our potential consumer base is happening digitally. And in order to effectively grow your brand in this ecosystem, it's really important to establish yourself online and to, you know, use that as a medium through which you can connect with your customers, both future and present. And so, you know, one of the ways that you can do that more effectively is to understand how search engines work, and learn how you can better promote yourself in the context of all of the competition around you. Next slide, please, Kyle. So that will take us into SEO and PPC. So those acronyms are search engine optimization, which we've already gone over, and then PPC is pay per click. So we can kind of jump into what those are and kind of how they would be applicable to your business. So both of these are actually strategies for search engine marketing, which sometimes you'll see abbreviated as SEM. The world of digital marketing is, as with other areas, is often clouded by these three-letter acronyms. So I'll try to explain what they are if they come up. So search engine marketing, often abbreviated as SEM. The two major ways of going about improving your digital presence would be SEO, which is a way that you can organically grow your click volume or traffic to your website through producing content that is organically going to be ranked higher in search engine result pages. And then pay per click is an approach that requires you to directly bid on these ad spots that you'll see on that right-hand side. So that might be a little bit small, but hopefully it gives you the idea. And hopefully you've even seen these things and interacted with them yourself, just browsing the web. So like if you go to search something on Google, typically like the first 3 or 4 results will have, you know, they'll look largely similar to the rest of the page, but it will have a little icon that indicates that it's an ad. Then there might be, you know, a block of content that Google tries to answer your question directly. And then there's a bunch of organic SEO produced links. And then again, at the bottom of the page, you'll have an additional spot allocated for ads. And so, you know, depending on which one of these avenues you promote your content with, that will determine where your entry is listed in the results page. So if you go that pay-per-click route, you can expect that your content will be viewed in those red rectangles. And if you promote your listing organically, your hope is that you would be on the first page of results, somewhere in that green rectangle. And the main two groups of PPC sellers, if you will, would be Google Ads, as well as social media companies will also allow you to purchase ads to show on their platforms. The two main ones probably would be Facebook and Instagram. There's also, you know, a myriad of other options that you could use. But those are the two that come to mind for me. If there's any other social media ad or other ad services that you're familiar with, feel free to drop that in the chat. I would love to see what else is out there. But next slide, Kyle. Okay, so if we go down and drill down into that first option, which is investing in search engine optimization, there are a number of pros and cons that you can expect to see if you go down this avenue. The pros would be that more users are going to click on organic results than ads. That, I don't know if you're like me, but typically whenever I browse the internet, I often will kind of hit a quick scroll initially and skip right over all of those ads. And I think the reason that is maybe kind of hinted at by bullet point 2, is that people often are skeptical of those ads, right? Like if you want trustworthy content, you're typically going to skip over that under the premise, true or untrue, that maybe, the better results are lower on the page in that SEO range. And so that's really better. If you can get your business to show up in that section, it's better for your long-term growth potential of your business. Something that is a pro, and you'll also see is a con of investing in SEO, is that the cost is going to be primarily upfront. So the actual act of optimizing your website to organically, rank better by these search engines is not necessarily an easy task. But that said, once you make the effort, it will kind of pay in dividends, thereafter. And so like some cons to that, it's not as quick to implement. So like doing that process of updating your website and your content is not something that's going to happen overnight. And it might not even be something that happens at all. Like there's a lot of competition out there, and so it is an uphill battle in some ways to get yourself listed, especially the more generalized searches. It is, there's a lot of people searching for insurance or men's apparel or women's apparel. Like if you want to get higher in the ranks, there are other ways that we'll touch on later that will help you to do that. And then again, cons, the cost is primarily upfront. So if maybe you don't have the time or the effort or resources available at this time to make that effort, and so you want to do something that is a little bit less of an undertaking. And that will lead us into PPC, which again stands for pay per click. And the reason that it's called PPC is because typically whenever you bid on these keywords through a Google Ads, for instance, what they charge you is actually a rate per click that your website gets. So that's why it's named that. And that should hopefully, I guess, provide a little context into how that billing process works as well. Pros of PPC would be you pay Google, you're going to get listed right away. So that's obviously really helpful if you're looking to spin something up quickly. Additionally, most ad sellers will allow you to target even further based on the location or the device or even potentially demographic of the user that is visiting or searching for those keywords. And then often on top of the actual service itself, they'll provide you kind of like an admin dashboard where you can view the success of your campaigns and see who is clicking on it, when they're clicking on it, just basic information that could help you kind of understand what's happening. Some cons to this. So if you ultimately don't make the investment in SEO and you just go the PPC route, the second that you stop paying Google or stop paying Facebook, that's when your ad stops showing up, and therefore your traffic will kind of fall off a cliff. Another challenge of using PPC is it takes a little bit more thought around what kind of keywords is my business associated with. Are those keywords that are going to really separate me from my competitors? How can I stand out in this this space and this ecosystem? And how can I make sure that the keywords that I'm bidding on I'm getting the most bang for my buck? Because something that's a really common keyword or really casts a wide net, that'll probably be more expensive. And so you want to make sure that you're making good use of your money. And then over time, there's a tendency with pay-per-click campaigns to have some staleness in the sense that if you're not constantly switching up those keywords that your business is listing on, you can kind of over time expect a little bit of a drop off just as people modify the way that they search for things and the like. And then finally, that other point, banner blindness, I kind of hinted at this earlier. A lot of people don't really like to click on ads, and so they might skip over your content, which could lead to you won't necessarily pay for it, but you won't get as much traffic as you could if you went the other route.
Eric, I want to make sure you just see the question in the chat there for the audience. Is there an effective way to organically transition from pay-per-click to search engine optimization?
Yeah. So I think, some of that will, let me, I guess, talk to this slide, and then Devin, if you'd like to, once I've finished talking through this slide, maybe you let me know if this answers your question, or if you maybe want me to go a little bit deeper. But so this slide is really trying to get at, that's all well and good. I understand SEO, I understand PPC. What ultimately should I choose at the end of the day? And I like to think of this as if it's like the trade-offs between buying a house and renting. So obviously not everyone is going to have the resources or the expertise to navigate the SEO market. And so PPC is kind of a great option if you're just starting out. And that'll be a great way to get some traffic to your website, especially if you're maybe early in the product development life cycle or the business development life cycle. You can kind of validate if this is something that people are interested in. Maybe you can understand who or like what that user base looks like, so that you can kind of establish a relationship with them and understand what their needs are further. I would say for long-term growth, an SEO strategy is very, very helpful, and it's a good thing to invest in. But I definitely understand that using PPC early on could be like almost a validation step. And then furthermore, like once you have more of a robust SEO solution in place, I think there's still value in using PPC for kind of big marketing pushes, or maybe you're rolling out a new campaign or a new product. I think that there's still definitely a lot of value in using PPC even later on into that SEO maturity journey.
Eric, do you think PPC could be a way that folks could identify the keywords that are really resonating with their customers and integrate that into their search engine optimization?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, so actually one of the things that I think is really cool around keywords, there's a tool that we'll look at later on, or actually a couple different tools that do kind of similar things. One of which will take a keyword and show you, the search phrases that people are actually searching for that led to that, or like contained that keyword. And it'll show you some really cool data visualization, so you can understand ultimately like what are people looking to solve and what are they looking to understand. And that's really helpful in understanding like how people got to your website, or how you want people to get to your website. And then additionally, there's another tool that you can kind of see, it'll allow you to kind of gain insight on what your competition is doing in a way. And you can almost reverse engineer in hopefully a more effective way than your competition, an SEO strategy that will help you stand out from your competitors as well. Devin, does that answer your question? All right, I guess I'll take silence as a good thing.
Yes, it does. I'm sorry about that. Yes, it does.
No, you're good. Awesome. Well, in that case, Kyle, I'll have you go ahead and jump to the next slide, and I think that'll put us over. I'll pass it off to my friend Sean here, who will tell us about the different types of SEO.
And just a quick, Sean, sorry, before you jump in, one more question in the chat. What is the drawback to using both simultaneously?
I would say the only real drawback is that there is, a cost associated with both of these things. I would say there's not really a functional drawback, more just that it's expensive, or it can get expensive. So if cost is something that is, really important to your business in this stage, consider maybe, not undertaking both of those journeys at the same time. But, if you're at this point where you maybe have more of those resources, I think there is definitely value in, kicking off your SEO journey while simultaneously like using PPC to get that uptick in traffic initially. And then the hope is that the SEO will pay off in the long term, whereas the PPC will kind of get you, hitting the ground running, establishing some customer contacts, things like that. Awesome. Thanks, Amber.
All right, too far, Kyle, but it's okay. I'm Sean. Let's see, I'm originally from Southern New Jersey, and then I went to Pitt and been on here ever since. And I've been at Headstorm for about, what, 9 months now? 6, 7 months? Less than a year, more than half a year. But yeah, so happy to talk to you guys today, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the different types of SEO that exist. Next one, please, Kyle. Thank you. So at a very high level, there are 3 different types of SEO. Their names are kind of self-explanatory. On-page SEO, so this has to do with anything that you actually see on the page and organization of your content. Then there's off-page SEO, which is anything that is not on your actual website, but helps search engines figure out what your site's about and how quote-unquote authoritative it is. Then last but not least, there's also technical SEO. That's a deeper topic that we're going to gloss over, but that involves how the search engine is able to index and crawl your site. So that's more or less how the search engine can read your site and find out what's on it, and then use that information to rank it appropriately. Next slide, please. All right, so keywords. We've heard the term a lot already. This is the most basic form of SEO and probably the thing that most people think of when they hear the term SEO. So this is obviously on-page SEO because it relates to the content that directly exists on your page itself. So some tips for keywords. You want to use them, but you want to use them naturally. You don't want to, keyword stuff is the term that was coined before. So that used to be, back in the day, you could kind of throw as many keywords as you wanted in your page, and it would kind of boost it up the rankings. Nowadays, search engines are smart enough to figure that out and not reward you, but ding you for that practice. So you want to, there's no magic number of times you should use a keyword, but basically you just want to use them naturally and probably more than once. You also want to use them within the first 100 to 150 words of your content. Just think about if you were reading something, if you were looking for a specific item or information, you would assume that if what you're reading is valuable, you would see some sort of keyword related to that in the beginning of what you're reading. Otherwise, you'd probably just skip it. You also want to use them in your title tag and meta description. So your title tag is the title of your site or title of certain pages. And then the meta description, that's also done in the HTML of your website, but that's what you see when you do a search and you look at the search results, you see usually the title, and then you see the meta description below it. And if you're familiar with Google search, if you look at what you searched, it'll actually bold the search terms in the meta description to kind of point them out to you. And also a good idea is to use them in the URL of your site. So this isn't necessarily the URL of your landing page, your actual site, but if you have subpages on your site, it's useful to put them in the keywords. So that way, when you do a search for them, Google can direct people directly to a specific page on your site if need be.
And Sean, we have a question in the chat, and I know we're going to go through an example here in a little bit, but around what does use words naturally mean? Like, what would be an example of using words naturally versus trying to keyword stuff a web page?
Sure. There's no real definition, but imagine if you're writing something, just imagine you're not trying to force it. Like you don't want, I'm sure we've all read something where it's like, oh, they're really trying to force these words in here or do something like that. You just kind of want to keep the keywords in the back of your mind, but write as you normally would. You don't want to seem like you're forcing it essentially.
And so maybe an example, let's say I have a sporting goods store.
Sure.
And I have a website for sporting goods. I wouldn't want to just throw like tennis, golf, basketball, football, all in random places all over the website. Right. I want to maybe write a continuous sentence that is, we specialize in equipment for the following sports.
Exactly.
That seems more natural.
you wouldn't want to have like, oh, we're a sporting goods store that sells sporting goods and we can handle all your sporting good needs. Like that's not like a natural sentence kind of that somebody would say. So you just kind of want to think about what sounds nice, I guess. There's no hard and fast rule, so it's hard to give like a definitive answer, but hopefully that helps. Next slide, please. All right, so some other SEO page tips. As already mentioned, the URLs, you also want to make them SEO friendly. So that means using real words. I'm sure we've all been to sites that have some words and then have what looks like random gibberish after them. We don't like that, and users don't like that. You also want to use hyphens to separate your words. This makes them more readable, and then search engine can kind of break them up more easily. And also use your keywords in them, as mentioned before. Additionally, proper title tags and meta descriptions. Again, I've touched on them. In addition to having keywords in them, keep in mind that this is what a user is typically going to see on the search results page when they're determining what search result they want to click on. So, think about if you're looking at a page, what would you want to know about your business that would make you pick it over something else that's similar? Also, structured data. So this is a little bit more of a technical topic, but if you've been on, for instance, Google search and you're looking at shopping results, I think they're called cards. You can see them. It'll give you like a picture of the item and an actual price and a little bit more information about them. So search engines get this from structured data. There's a link there to a helper, and I think Devin's going to touch on it a little bit in the tools later. Also, use appropriate header tags. So header tags, not only do they break up the content of your site and make it more readable for both users and search engines, but it basically helps, well, it kind of gives it away, but it helps the search engine read it, figure out what content's on the page, and give users a more appropriate direction where they want to go to. And proper internal linking. So this is linking from your pages on your actual site to other pages on your site. This kind of goes back to the URLs a little bit as well. Use keywords in there. That's always good because then a person can click on a link and they know where they're going. Search engines can kind of direct them a little bit better. And last but not least, you want to optimize images. So behind the scenes, you can put a description on your image. So search engines can read this as well. So that's something they also look for. And there's also tags you can put on images that you'd want to use. And last but not least, make sure they're not too large. You don't want to, no one wants to wait for a web page to load for a long time, and neither do search engines. So make sure that it's high enough resolution where it's not distorted, but not super large where it's bigger than it needs to be and it causes your load times to suffer.
And Sean, so I know as we're getting into some of these things, they do start to become a little technical. Sure. And for people like me, I'm non-technical as well, as I'm sure a lot of folks on the call are as well. The context of this is in what the HTML of your website. And are these all things that you can explore with, if it's a Squarespace or whatever the website builder is that you use
Sure.
to create your website?
Sure. So title, yes, I'm assuming. I've never used Squarespace or Wix or what have you. But I'm sure there's a way. I can look into that and get back to you guys.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's, things like headers and linking and URLs, that's probably outside of what exactly those are, probably outside of the scope of what we'll present on, but of course we're always happy to chat, to dig into some of those things if those are unfamiliar terms for any of you. Yeah,
I've used Drupal, which is a content management system before, kind of similar to WordPress. And I'm just making this assumption, but you can kind of type in there as you would a Word document and insert headers and things like that. And I'm assuming Eric's shaking his head, so I'm assuming it translates those into the appropriate HTML tags. So.
And I know Webflow supports that as well. So there's a whole section where it says SEO and you can fill out this specific information, then it'll make sure it displays on your site correctly.
There we go.
Awesome.
Thanks, Ann.
Awesome. And a question from Kendra. If you have flyers, do you include all the information on the flyer in the description? So Kendra, if I can kind of read between the lines here, I think it's, if you're posting a picture of a flyer as a JPEG or some other type of embedded object within a web page, you want to include that content in the tag of the flyer so that it essentially passes through to search engine optimization as well?
I'm not sure, but my first instinct would be to have take that information from the flyer and put it on your actual site on a normal content page, and then tag that image with something more appropriate that's shorter. That's what I would say. Cool. I wouldn't have your only source of that flyer information be an image of the flyer itself.
And something we will kind of touch on perhaps on the next slide is if you're going to have images or information served in non-text formats, just for accessibility purposes, for the greater good and the public that will be ultimately reaching your site, you want to make sure that you have that information in other formats as well, so that people who are using like a screen reader or other technologies are able to consume that data as well.
And that's a great point. So accessibility, again, probably outside the scope of our topic, but it's essentially the concept of designing your site so that those who are differently abled are able to access the content in the same way that I would as I'm looking at it just scrolling through on my phone. And so there's an entire set of strategies around that, and that's also really important for your business because there's also legal requirements around making sure that your sites are accessible, especially in certain industries like healthcare or others. And so again, probably outside of the scope of what we're talking about for SEO, but happy to discuss that. I think we have a good deal of been there, done that experience with accessibility.
And then I think we have one other question that slipped through the cracks here. Any tips for self-promotion when publishing articles through LinkedIn posts and tweets?
We'll get to that next, I think. And if I don't answer your question on the next slide, we'll circle back. One too far.
I think the arrow keys work, Kyle. I was having this issue the other day when I was presenting it, though. It does feel a little weird.
All right, so off-page SEO. As I mentioned before, this is anything that's not related to the content and organization of your actual site. So basically what this really revolves around is what's called backlinks. So backlinks are anything on the web that links back to your site. So this could be maybe your store, business, what have you, was mentioned in an article by someone else. Maybe you're actually linked from another site back to your site. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a true URL clickable link. It could just be a mention. But basically, Google uses this to create what they call authority, give you an authority score. So not all backlinks are created equal, though. So the more authority the site has that has your link, you get more authority as a result. For instance, if you have an article written about you in the New York Times, that's going to give you a lot more authority than it is if you have 100 backlinks on some local pizza shop's website or something like that. So you kind of want to pick and choose where you go. I mean, nothing is ever going to hurt you. If you have a link from a low authority site, that's fine. Just know you're not going to get as much authority from that as you would from a more quote unquote reputable site.
And I like to think of this, I kind of draw parallels between this and the ranking system that's used in chess, where, if you're really, really good at chess and you beat someone who is kind of a novice, no one's going to be that impressed with it. But if not no one's going to be that impressed with it. It's less impressive relatively. But if you are, a novice and you beat some world-class chess player, obviously a huge deal. So it's kind of a similar thing here, where if you get linked by that, those expert, top-notch chess players of the world, that's a big deal. And Google thinks so too. So they'll, give you more clout for it.
Yeah. So just quickly tying that back to our sporting goods example, let's say the New York Times writes an article that says, "We've discovered the best sporting goods store in Pittsburgh." And then in the first paragraph, they say, "Visit their site here to see why it's so great." That's kind of an example of a backlink.
Right. They don't even have to say visit their site here. Just a mention of your business in that article, Google will find that. You'll still get points for that. So
awesome.
You don't have to, please put our link on your page, as long as you're getting the publicity. It's basically a popularity contest, I guess. Just an easy way to look at it is what it is. You want to be friends with the popular people, I guess you can say. So that'll get you more authority. So some tips on how to generate these backlinks. Stand out. So you want to basically be creating content that's unique. So basically, if you go to a website and it's just nothing stands out, it's just kind of like, no one's going to write about that. No one's going to give you any publicity if you're just, another business. You got to create unique content, figure out kind of maybe what your niche is, figure out how to differentiate yourself from others in the same field, and kind of go with that and really use that to generate backlinks. You can also create and leverage partnerships, whether these are things on social media with, I hate the term, but influencers, if you will, or maybe it's a strategic partnership with another business. You can kind of leverage those to generate backlinks. Engaging on social media, especially nowadays, also is a good way. I'm sure we've all seen, well, maybe not all of us, but I know I've seen a lot of like, you'll see like a business Twitter page that's made a funny comment, or there'll be like fast food chains feuding about their chicken sandwiches. Things like that. It sounds silly, but they're generating backlinks from that. So it works. PR campaigns, I know everyone's probably not a big fan, but email blasts, maybe you're doing a mail blast. I'm not a huge fan of them, but you put flyers on people's cars. Anything that kind of generates a little bit of PR, you never know. Generate some business, it'll help. And last but not least, creating shareable content, especially in today's day and age. Creating a cool video or a cool picture or even a meme that people share is an easy way kind of to generate backlinks. So kind of the whole rule to think about is you want to create something, no matter what it is, that people want to share. And that way you get the backlinks. What was that question?
So first, I want to circle back to that earlier question about self-promotion. Renee, does that answer your question about self-promotion and kind of publishing articles through LinkedIn and tweets and things of that nature that might help? Okay, awesome. Thank you. And then the next question was from Anya, and it's when other organizations tag you, does that help your backlinks?
Tag in what sense?
Probably through correct me if I'm wrong, Anya, but maybe through like just a link on their website or tag in like a tweet, perhaps.
Yeah, like on social media or like an article, and just like when they're tagging, let's say like LinkedIn, for example, if other people are tagging you.
Sure. I'm not sure how it works with social media. I don't know if any of you guys do, but sorry.
I was going to say, speculating here, yeah. I think you, at least within their ecosystem,
sure, yeah.
They might have some way to measure authority within their platform, so that like, I don't know that someone tagging you on LinkedIn would affect where you land on like a Google search page, but certainly I would imagine within LinkedIn, it's in their best interest to post or to, prioritize their search results as well. And so I imagine you'd stand out in LinkedIn through their kind of backlinking authority system.
And then I think that's all an ecosystem too, where the more hits your LinkedIn page gets, your name is likely in the URL of the page that's visited, which then is a form of backlinking itself and building your presence, being the popular kid as Sean said on the internet.
Yeah, I know this is about SEO, but it's kind of also just how to increase your digital presence, as Eric kind of said. So while getting all the tags on LinkedIn may not raise you on like the search results page, it's still definitely a good thing and something you should try to do. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah.
Next page, please. All right, so technical SEO, like I mentioned before, I'm not going to go too deep into this because it's a little bit more technical, but I think Devin will give you some tools that'll help make it more easily accessible. But basically, search engines basically crawl and index is what they call it, your site. So they're practically loading your site, reading all the content, parsing through it, finding the necessary information and then using that to match up with a search query. So basically kind of some of the tenets of having strong technical SEO is your site loads fast. I mentioned this before. Images, you don't want to have big images that take your site a long time to load. People don't like this, and search engines don't either, and they can tell. So that's something you want to make sure is good. Be well structured. Again, this kind of goes back to using the proper headers and tags, or sorry, titles and things like that. Making sure it's well structured content-wise, and also you don't have pages that link all over the place. Think of like a nice hierarchical layout. That's kind of how you want your site to be. You don't want like this page to go over here and then this page also links to that one. You kind of want to lay them out in a nice way. That way the search engines can crawl them and essentially read them properly. You don't want to have dead links. No one likes when these are on pages. How many times have we been to a website and we're like, oh, that sounds great. Then we go and click on it and it takes us nowhere. No one likes those, and neither do search engines, and they will find them and they will ding you for it. So you want to kind of minimize those. I know Devin has a tool, I think, that'll help you find those and eliminate them. You also don't want to duplicate content. So this kind of goes back a little bit to the keyword stuffing, but you don't want to have the same information in multiple places. Not only is this kind of confusing for a user and confusing for you, because you have to make sure that that duplicate content remains the same. If you change one, you have to change the other. But it also confuses search engines a little bit. So you don't want to have duplicate content. You want to make sure the information you have on your pages is sufficient, but not too wordy where it gets a little hairy for both search engines and users. You want your site to be secure. Most sites nowadays use HTTPS. I would imagine that's a pretty easy setting in things like Squarespace and things like that. You will get ranked lower if your site only uses HTTP than HTTPS sites. So you want to make sure you turn that on. You also want to be mobile compatible. A lot of websites, or a lot of people are browsing the web now on their mobile devices. Google knows this, so they will check and make sure it's mobile compatible. And if it's not, and a user is searching from a mobile device, you will get ranked lower than one that is. So that's an important thing. And I know we kind of touched on this a little bit before. The web accessibility guidelines, you want to make sure your site follows these. These are things to make sure, as Eric mentioned before, like people that use screen readers and things like that can still use your site. What else would there be? Colorblind people, things like that. Anything that deals with accessibility for people that might have anything going on that is different from you or I. Make sure everybody in the world can read your site and use it however they need to. And that's about it for technical SEO. I don't know if any questions came in on that one.
Nothing so far. Any questions? Anyone, even over the mic? I just want to make sure we pause and if anyone has questions either from the chat or over the mic for Sean.
There's one about bots scrolling sites, and if that could have a negative impact on SEO.
So the question is from Wendy, and it's some type of bot in Canada cruises by my page and hits every single page once a month. Does that hurt my SEO? Could you elaborate a little bit more on what that, or I guess how you became aware of this and what it's maybe doing on the site? Is it?
Sure.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'm assuming it's scraping my page. I have no idea, but it'll go from like 0 to 40 in like less than a minute. And then on the analytics, it shows that it hit every single page. I only know it's from Canada because it's the only traffic I get from Canada. And then it's like happens once a month. So I was just wondering if that makes it, obviously my bounce rate tanks a lot, but I was just wondering if that makes it worse, if it looks damaging to Google.
I would not think that Google itself has any knowledge of that individual traffic. Like the process that happens for Google to crawl these websites is like they will have a machine somewhere in the cloud that will visit your website and consume all of the data on it and click all the links and things like that. So I think their ranking would only be based on that machine visiting your site and not necessarily other machines that visit your site, if that makes sense.
And also, Google's algorithms are pretty darn sophisticated, and so I think they are very much able to differentiate spam from real traffic or actual traffic, unless of course you're selling something to bots in Canada, which it sounds like
I am not. I'm not. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I really wouldn't worry too much about that. But it's likely that you could blacklist that address if you don't want that bot crawling your pages. You could go and do that. There are also in the sort of technical SEO side of things, there are files that you can place in your web directory that describe to bots what they're allowed to and not allowed to look at on your site. And so if they're good bots, they'll listen to that. Otherwise, you could blacklist the IP. But it doesn't sound like something that should negatively impact your SEO. There is one other longer question.
Let's see. Are there any solid SEO courses available online? Is there a way to start building a portfolio while studying it? There's a few from Google, but are there other platforms that that could be a good fit? Asking how to make a career for it, and how to establish some authority for yourself in this space. So I know we all kind of touched up on our SEO knowledge as we were preparing for this. Any resources that you guys found particularly helpful, or I know Pluralsight is a course that's pretty good for technical and non-technical training, SEO as well. Any other recs from the group?
I haven't explored any courses themselves. Google does offer some great resources. They sort of describe what they're looking for and how you can match what they're looking for. So all the sort of things that Sean said about like fast refresh rates, no broken links, accessibility. Google has good documentation for all that stuff. But if you want to go into an SEO career, definitely probably look, like Pat said, into Pluralsight or something like that. But at least I don't have experience with a course like that.
And for context, Pluralsight is the platform. We actually have a enterprise subscription to Pluralsight as a company. So we use that. It's a third-party SaaS platform that we use to upskill all of our team members technically and functionally. So that's why we recommend. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, that is why we recommend Pluralsight.
And I know it kind of goes against how the question was phrased, but from if you're looking to build a career out of it, I do think, like as you identified, that having some kind of authority yourself is very important. And so I would not necessarily count out the resources that like a Google has available, because they are probably, give or take, the top 1 or 2 search engines in the world. And I know that a lot of their courses will come en suite with an actual certification upon completion, which if you're going out and looking to ultimately get a job or maybe do this a little bit more professionally yourself, like that would go a long way, I would imagine.
Are you more of a Bing guy?
I'm duck,
yeah. And then one more question here from Dennis, I think is a really good question. Who should make these SEO improvements to your site? Is this something a digital marketing company does? Is this something that, I think we all have freelance technical folks that help us with some of these things? Is that something that a freelancer should know how to do? Any recommendations on finding where to get help with improving your SEO?
Sure. I think that's going to really depend on like your comfort level with the web technology that you're using. So I know that in the poll, like about half of you sort of administer your own and maintain your own websites for your companies. And I imagine maybe if you're in that boat, you feel comfortable going in and making sure you're like meta title tags are all properly configured, and making sure running a backlink or like a broken link tool and making sure that there are no broken links. So if you're in that boat, I think that it's reasonable to at least do some of the checks we talked about today yourself. If you're one step removed from the site, it's going to be a little bit harder for you to perform these checks yourself. You may want to ask your front-end developer or whoever you have maintaining the site to do that. Or if you feel that SEO is a really important part of your business and you have funding for it, you could definitely hire. There are SEO engineers that will audit your site and give recommendations and potentially act on those. So Dennis, it sounds like you did have someone do that and you have a front-end engineer, but there was a disconnect between the two. I think that that's definitely a tricky situation to be in, especially if you're not sort of holding the reins on the website and your developer is. They're definitely, I don't have a quick and easy solution for that. I think it's going to depend.
And Dennis, just to address kind of this limbo a little bit more directly, like maybe something that you could do if you still have access to both of these parties, maybe take this deck that we'll share at the end of today's session and maybe sit down with the both of them virtually or in person and kind of talk them through, like, these are some of the tenets of SEO that I want to target. How can we as a team ultimately work towards bettering our web presence? And maybe that would help with some of the disconnect in that specific situation. But yeah, I totally agree with everything that Devin said as well. There are definitely different ways you can go about doing this. You could hire someone to more directly help you if that's helpful to you.
One last while we're transitioning. This is also something that can very easily be done nearshore or offshore. So if you have a kind of task runner, any type of platform that you use for just quick contract work from folks that are experts in this area, there are tons of SEO folks in Eastern Europe, in India, in Latin America that do this specifically and do it at competitive price rates as well.
Great, thanks so much.
Sure.
So I think we're good to keep moving, Kyle.
Yeah. All right.
The home stretch. So you heard from Eric about sort of why to do SEO, and you heard from Sean about what SEO optimizations you can make. And so now I'm here to tell you maybe how you can make those optimizations with the tools that are out there. So the first couple tools I'm going to talk about are straight from Google. So they definitely are the ground truth on who's looking at your site through Google search. And if you're one of the people that has direct access to their website and their domain, you can link your domain directly into your Google Search Console, and you can look at things like impressions, which are how many times your site is shown to users, and clicks, which is how many times they click from the Google search page onto your site. And then you can do comparisons like your click-through rate. So that's going to be how many times people see it compared to how many times they actually click on it. And if that's suffering, maybe you need to do things like improve the structured content so that Google's showing the site the way you want it to, or update your keywords so that they're a little bit earlier in your site so that users see them immediately. So the Google Search Console is a really great way to gain a lot of information. If you really want to just drown in data, that's probably where you should go first. Google Analytics is another big data offering from Google, but it's a little bit more focused on the user rather than the search and search engine results. So it'll have things like user preferences, and it'll let you connect more directly with some of the Google Ads services, so you can do targeted ads based on who's visiting your page and what they're clicking on. So sort of both of those in tandem, you can at least get a look at who is visiting your site, what queries bring people to your site, and then make some decisions based on that. Some other interesting metrics and research tools. One of them is this Insta The Public tool, and we're going to have links to all of these. We're going to have links to all of these tools in the PowerPoint. So once that gets sent out, it'll be really easy to click through these. I'm sorry I don't have the links up here. But anyway, Answer the Public, the way that works is this is a tool Eric mentioned earlier. Maybe there's a keyword on your site. I chose in this little graphic here, software engineering, because that's what we do here at Headstorm. And so you plug that into Answer the Public, and it describes the ways that people place that keyword into a query. So in this example, it's like 8 different question words, and then the questions people form from those question words. So say you want to draw in people looking for jobs in software engineering. Maybe Headstorm does, who knows? You can look at the queries there and maybe focus on answering those questions in your site so that you know that people searching for those things are then gonna organically funnel into your site. Because like Eric said, that organic traffic, the traffic where people are trusting your site, that's gonna be probably the most important traffic. You can also do SERP testing or search engine results page testing. This is a pretty handy tool, so you can run a query on an arbitrary device in an arbitrary location. So I could go on and say, I want to pretend I'm an iPhone 12 in Helena, Montana. And then you can run that query and say, okay, Headstorm doesn't really show up there. That's interesting, not too surprising. Run that same query maybe on the desktop computer in Pittsburgh, and it's going to be right at the top. So with that, you can see how location and device affects your search. So maybe you need to update your site to be mobile compatible so it shows up on that iPhone 12.
A quick question from the chat. So Christine says, you mentioned placing keywords earlier in your site. What exactly do we mean by that? Is there an example of placing a keyword earlier in your site versus later?
Sure.
Yeah, so the easiest example I can think of is imagine you're writing like a blog post about, I don't know, intermittent fasting, I don't know, something like that. If you're searching for that and you're reading, a post about that, you would imagine that intermittent fasting is going to be mentioned probably near the beginning of that first paragraph or page of content, right? Imagine, like I said, if you're looking up anything, you're not going to read through the whole article to see if it makes sense to you or not. You're probably going to skim the first few bits, see if the information that is in there that you want is in there, and then you're going to maybe read the rest. So putting it at the beginning, within reason, you don't have to like make it the first 2 words or what have you of the content, but if you do have like content on your page, make sure it's within the first 100 to 150 words.
Yeah, and I would say it's also not like entirely about words, but think about like if you're visiting the site on a number of different like devices. So like if you're pulling it up on a mobile device, for instance, you want that content that you want people to see to be on the screen at that time when they click it. Because human attention span is very, very low, myself very much included. So like more often than not, if the content isn't on the screen, people are going to get bored and they're going to go to your competitor. So try to think about it like that as well. Like definitely number of words is important, but just make sure that it is on screen when they visit, because that'll ultimately grab their attention.
Yeah, the number of words is more of a rule of thumb, if you will. It's not, you don't have to, count the words on your page and you hit 100 and you're like, oh no, I gotta rewrite everything so I can fit my keyword in there. So it's not like that, but it's more of a rule of thumb.
I hope that helps, Christine. So the next set of tools we talked about where you can get all the data about how people are using your site and how people are using other sites. You can also find some free tools that will perform audits on your site. This is going to be a little bit more technical on the technical SEO side. So something like Google Lighthouse, which is usually shipped with Chrome. You can go on, perform an audit of your site. which is going to tell you a little bit about how the performance, like the page load times, how accessible it is, best practices just in web development, and then give some SEO metrics as well. And the nice thing about Google Lighthouse is it gives you scores, but it also gives you line items of things that it has individually picked out that you can improve on your site, as well as suggestions on how to make those improvements. Another one that's probably even more on the technical side is SEO Spider, and this is sort of your own personal web page crawling application. And so maybe this is what that bot Canada is running, but it'll look through all of the pages on your site and check every single link to make sure that it's not broken, and give you a report based on all the links and broken links in your site so you can go through and fix them, along with a couple other technical details like checking your robots.txt file, which is the file I mentioned earlier that prevents certain bots from looking through your website. So some technical audit tools there.
We had a follow-up question from Christine. What does on-screen mean? So I had used that phrase in the context of, like, imagine you're searching for Pat's Sporting Goods store. If I click on the link to go to patsportinggoodsstore.org, and on my computer screen or my phone screen, or whatever device that I'm browsing for Pat's Sporting Goods on, if I go to that and I click the link and I don't see anything about sporting goods in my, where I land, I'm going to be upset because I'm looking for sporting goods. And so that's kind of just like a good rule of thumb of, if you want to grab the user's attention for a certain topic or product or service, to just have that visible first thing when the user gets on the website.
And so another example, I just Googled Headstorm and pulled up headstorm.com on my phone. And the first thing I see is engineering growth. And that's very intentional. We're an engineering company. And so we very intentionally wanted the first thing that you saw to be engineering.
Cool. Looks like that clarified things. Thank you for the question.
All right, and so here are a couple other small free tools that you can run. We talked about mobile, how important that is. Google wants your page to be mobile friendly, and it will actually show different results on a mobile device than it will on a desktop device. So to make sure that you're getting those mobile users visiting your site, just quick and easy, run the mobile friendly test Google provides. It'll say yes or no, and based on that, you can then move forward. The accessibility checklist, make sure that maybe people that are visually impaired have the ability to get content from your site. And then the structured data markup helper, that's going to be more on the technical side. If you're adding HTML yourself to your website, you can go through and make sure that the tags are all there and the data, Google can read your data and then present it on the search results page in a very pleasing way. So I'm going to just touch briefly on these. All the other tools I mentioned previously are free and accessible, and you can go grab them and use them right now. But they do sort of form to cover the entire SEO space. It's numerous tools that you have to pull together and look at. There are more enterprise solutions that go and grab the features from all of those free tools I mentioned, centralize them into one unified location. And these are just two examples. One of them has a free trial for 7 days, and then the other is $7 for 7 days. After that, I think it's on the order of $100 a month to continue using. So fairly expensive tools depending on your use, but they do combine everything into one neat, usable place. They have data over time metrics, they do analytics, they perform the audits for you, you can do some market research, and you can also look at what your competitors are doing. So these tools will compile a list of similar sites, how they perform in search engine results on very similar queries. So something to consider if you have the time and the expertise, you can sort of cobble together the functionality here by using the rest of the tools. But you can also rely on these primarily as well.
And we have two more questions in the chat. The first one is asking about, Pat mentioned that you could get someone from perhaps like near or offshore to do some of the more manual tasks. Was the name of that service or product called Task Runner? Are there specific task?
Yeah, one is, so there's all kinds of different options. One that I think is probably the best, or at least in my experience, I think everyone has different experiences, but the best one that I would recommend at least experimenting with is called Upwork, UPWORK. Upwork essentially is a marketplace for freelancers. And so you can get freelance help online, and a lot of times those folks are all over the world. There are several platforms like that. If you essentially just look for freelance communities or freelance help using our new understanding of Google SEO, you'll find all kinds of options. But like I said, I think I've heard of people having the most luck with Upwork.
And then the second question is, what would you suggest for search words if you have a niche in an industry? And this comes from Karen. Karen, could you perhaps elaborate on what industry or what niche you might be hinting at here?
Sure. So I do flower arranging parties. So I'm not a florist. And I've had several conversations with both Google and Yelp. I don't want to pay for ads that send me your work to do birthday flowers down the street or funeral, et cetera. To have the search word flower arranging party, is what I want people to be looking for, but I'm creating, a market, if you will.
Sure.
The initial flower arranging parties was to do weddings as an alternative to do it yourself or hiring a florist. Is gather everybody together to have a party to make the flowers.
Sure.
That's cool. Okay, that sounds really fun.
Yeah.
Maybe
And it's grown to networking parties, etc. So I'm experimenting on my page with where to place networking and party and flower arranging and party, do it yourself with help. Not like a florist, but different.
So, this is definitely not meant to be an absolute answer, but I'll just kind of give it my best go. Is like, to me, something where you are creating awareness about a new concept will not necessarily be easily done through just keyword promotion. I think like that, as I'm sure you probably have, your leg all over the place in different marketing strategies. Like, to me, that makes sense more to happen, as a different marketing strategy that makes people aware that this is, even a concept. So maybe like getting more involved in social media or showing, the actual process of like promoting the concept through like an influencer, like Sean had mentioned, or through some of those other strategies might reap more immediate benefits than trying to go the keyword route.
Yeah, and I think this correct me if you feel otherwise, Karen, but it sounds like it's kind of a fundamental challenge for your marketing strategy more broadly, even beyond SEO. And I think this is true about tons of businesses, especially ones that are coming up with novel and creative concepts. One thing that Eric said that I think is worth considering is creating your own terminology around what you do. So that way, as you promote that specific terminology in all of your other channels, in social and in direct marketing and in, whatever it may be, PPC, we talked about pay-per-click, the more that you make that term present, the more then that could be a keyword that you could invest in to drive traffic to your site. So just like, we all learned about the term co-working when WeWork blew up, or rideshare when Uber blew up. no one knew what rideshare was until Uber existed. But now if you Google rideshare, you know Uber is going to be the first response. And so, again, that's more kind of holistic marketing strategy, and we're by no means marketing strategists, but something, to consider.
One other thing
That's a
I would
great
look
point.
at is if there are businesses that do some of the parties and the home and the events, like painting and wine or things like that, maybe use some of these tools for the ones that come up on top and see how they're structuring their keywords. And then can you test modeling that with your business and see if that helps?
Thanks, Kyle.
I think I just was going to call out two more things. The Google Webmaster Guidelines is sort of going to contain a lot of the stuff we talked about here. It's going to tell you what Google wants. And essentially in 2022, SEO is about forming authority for your site. And a lot of that is through the backlinks. And content is king there. And so Google now is smarter than it was before, and it'll continue to then be smarter as time passes. And so it's going to cut through any little tricks for like getting people to go to your site. And it's really going to come down to, are you providing good content that people want to look at? You can use these tools to find what people are searching for to target that as your content, but really like providing that good content yourself. That's kind of why I put Grammarly here, because it's not an SEO tool, but it's a tool that will improve your SEO for sure. I think that is it on the tools. Yeah, do you have a question?
Can I ask a quick? Yeah. The thing you mentioned about like the conceptually how people understood ride sharing when Uber blew up, or the other example you used as well, are you saying that viral growth in and of itself is a marketing strategy? Is that what you're trying to get at, or something else?
Sorry, which kind of growth? I just didn't catch that.
Like viral growth in and of itself is a marketing tool. Was that what you're trying to get at? Like kind of like people understood social media because Facebook also grew really quickly. Was that what you're trying to get at, or were you trying to explain something else?
What was the?
Well, I think well, it's Pat that mentioned this, but I think what he was getting at was when you have like a new business or a new idea, there might not be keywords for that already. So instead of struggling to find some magic, sauce of pre-existing keywords, you just might have to make your own keyword and then market around that. And then if that's your focus, people, and then if you become big now, people associate that word with your business. You know what I mean? It's kind of your own keyword, for lack of a better term. I mean, other people will use it when there's competitors, but I think that's kind of what he was getting at. And I mean, yeah, I think viral growth is for sure a strategy. I mean, it's not an easy one, but it certainly pays off.
So kind of like Google now is associated with search engines. It's almost like a branding thing, is what you're saying.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, thank you. I understand. Yeah.
Oh, great question. And I think we're running a little tight on time, so I don't know if we'll quite get to the demo portion we were planning. But if anyone has any final questions, we're happy to help you out any way we can. So if there's any specific problems like you're dealing with your business and how to grow things, either the SEO route, PPC route, digital marketing in general, feel free to drop it in the chat or speak up. Alrighty. Kyle, maybe do you want to? One of the tools that we covered today was called Lighthouse. Okay, we did get a question. Is there any difference between SEO for an individual or for a company? That is a great question.
What do you mean by
Like,
I mean, you're
self-promotion versus company promotion, is that sort of?
So like maybe for example, like a realtor, maybe they work for Howard Hanna, but Howard Hanna might show up on SEO, or they might maximize SEO marketing, but can that individual themselves, they want to stand out from their other Howard Hanna realtors and have it more specific to them rather than Howard Hanna, the company. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason you couldn't make your own website, for instance. Obviously, if someone searches Howard Hanna, they're probably not going to get you at the top. They'll get Howard Hanna, but you know, maybe you have, I don't know, you're like best realtor in Pittsburgh or something.com. So maybe people are just searching for realtors in general, and you could make your site that way where those kind of keywords you show up.
Yes, that's sort of what if someone's searching for a realtor in a certain marketplace, that realtor pops up ahead of the other Howard Hanna realtors in that marketplace.
Yeah, I think some of that might be driven in some ways through the concept of those backlinks that Sean had mentioned earlier. So, you know, if this hypothetical situation is relevant to you personally, like if you have positive interactions with people or you know, sites that are ultimately going to promote you somewhere, maybe make sure that any links that they provide are to your individualized, you know, page within the Howard Hanna umbrella, or you know, if there's ways that they can provide backlinks that will benefit you directly. I'm sure anyone that is writing about you positively will be more than willing to make sure that they give you that extra bump.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Another thing you can think about is, like, why would people be searching for you and coming to your site? So we talked a bit about the content marketing. So, and it can be a heavy lift, right? You're trying to sell real estate, not be a blogger. But if you can write about the neighborhood, you know, on a consistent basis, once a week, every 2 weeks, something where you're things about the neighborhoods you're in, things that people searching would and looking to buy a house may be of value to them, you can start to you build that content with those keywords, and that starts to elevate your rankings.
Gotcha.
So and when people come to your site, then there's a little bit of credentializing there too, because you're demonstrating you understand and you know that area of the market, which has side benefits.
Gotcha. So raise your profile by raising your activity.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say thank you, Eric, Devin, Pat, Sean, and Kyle for your time today. This was a great session. We have a lot to learn, but at least everybody who participated today has something to start from, or a refresher, or at least a list, just like you say, start with Lighthouse. So we do have a recording, and we have more supporting articles and worksheets on our page. So take the time to just reflect on this information, digest, reach out if you have any questions, and and this is your journey to get, to improve your website. So thank you to the Headstorm team for all your helpful tips and for answering all of the great questions that we had today. See you everybody next time. Don't forget to fill out our survey. Tell us how we did. This is how we learn and how we improve our workshops moving forward. And have a great night, everybody.